Fast and the Furious, or should I say Fast and Furious 4. They didn't include the 4, but it's still Fast and Furious 4. In fact, it's very similar to the title of the first movie, which is called The Fast and the Furious, except it's just called Fast and Furious. I have no idea why they decided to do that. I also have no idea why I'm deciding to ramble about it, but yeah, Fast and Furious 4, let's talk about it. This is the 4th in my series of Fast and Furious reviews, thanks to the wonderful art of procrastination. This is unfortunately the last Fast and Furious review I'm gonna be doing before I see Fate of the Furious. So in Fast and Furious 4, this movie takes place basically roughly 5 years after the events of the first movie. It's kind of an interquel. It takes place somewhat between the second movie and the third movie, but either way, the characters have changed. They're all in different places now. Brian works for the FBI, Dominique and Letty have found their own crew, and they're off in another part of the world doing odd jobs and criminal stuff, you know, the Fast and Furious stuff we've come to expect from them. Mia is, I mean, she's looking pretty and off doing whatever the hell Mia does in her spare time. In fact, in this movie, I don't remember Mia doing anything other than buying groceries and sleeping with Brian, but she's pretty and she's useless. That's her role. She plays it well. Hey, Dom and Letty are living a very dangerous life, and then he kind of goes, I don't want to hurt you, Letty, so I gotta move and go away or whatever. Dominique leaves her, and then he gets pulled back into the States because Letty dies. Yeah, Letty gets killed. She gets brutally murdered. Like, she's in a race or something, and something goes wrong, and she gets killed, and this is what pulls Dominique back to the States to try to figure out what happened to Letty. And I know story-wise they had to come up with a reason to bring Dom back to the States, but seriously, why kill Letty? Why would you kill the badass, fine-ass Letty? Why would you do that? Why, guys? Why? I just mentioned that Mia is really attractive and also really useless in this movie, so why couldn't you just kill her and bring Dom back to the States that way? I don't know, I guess they were looking for an emotional punch that wasn't there. So Brian and Dominique's paths intercross again in this movie because Brian is investigating this drug cartel led by somebody named Braga, and it turns out somebody inside Braga's organization is responsible for what happened to Letty, so this immediately reignites the feud between Dominique and Brian. But it also unintentionally reignites their brotherhood and their love for each other, and that's really what this movie is about. This movie really is about reestablishing Dom and Brian as brothers, and that's really where the movie is the most successful in my opinion. Ultimately, both Dom and Brian have to go undercover inside the Braga cartel for different reasons. Dom is out for revenge, Brian is out for, well, his job and revenge. We have another Fast and Furious movie where they finally bring back the original cast, and it is just, yes, I have been waiting for this. Seriously, who else is happy as hell that they decided to bring back the original cast for this film? It's brilliant. I love it. That's like one of the best decisions they made. It is great to see Dominique Toretto back in his main role, and Vin Diesel is twice as badass and twice as stoic as he was in the first movie. Seriously, there's a part where he's going after this guy who he thinks has information that could lead him to the guy that killed Letty. He basically body slams him on a car, and then he uses one of those car lever pulley things, and there's an engine that almost drops on this guy's face. He somehow grabs it with one hand and keeps it from falling on him. Now, we all know that humans aren't supposed to have that type of strength, but apparently Dom does. I could honestly tell that this movie was gonna have some ridiculousness to it, and some ridiculous stuff, some ridiculous stunt work from the first action sequence in this movie. The first action sequence of this movie is actually really damn good. Letty and Dom and their crew are trying to hijack this truck of gasoline, and that's really one area where this movie succeeds, where maybe Tokyo Drift and maybe some of the other ones didn't, is that the car action is twice as good, twice as badass. The stunt work is really well done. The way that it's filmed, Justin Lin did a great job with the action sequences in this film. They're really exciting, they're really adrenaline pumping, and they're also kind of gritty. They're shot in a way that is more of a gritty kind of stylistic edge to them. And I really appreciated that about Justin Lin, who in my opinion is the best director who ever directed a Fast and Furious movie. That opening action sequence was crazy, and there's a whole bunch of other ones involving cars throughout the movie that you've come to expect, and again, the stunt work is really top notch here. Granted, there's a whole bunch of unrealistic shit that happens that you kind of have to roll with because it's Fast and Furious. Like Dominique and Letty being in a car and driving towards an exploding truck that's heading towards them, and it's somehow missing them by inches as they're driving towards it. It just kind of floats over the hood, and it's just kind of like, yeah, that was bullshit, but it looked really cool. I also want to talk about Brian O'Connor real quick. I mean, he's a character that was in the first two movies. He wasn't in Tokyo Drift. He's once again back as an FBI agent, and what they focused on for his character in this movie is that he's a little bit more conflicted. I mean, technically, he's always been conflicted if you look at his roles in this franchise in the previous movies, but for this movie in particular, he's even more conflicted. I mean, Mia even says it to him at a certain point in this movie when they're having coffee or something. She's like, are you sure that you're a good guy trying to be bad, or are you really just a bad boy pretending to be good? And that's the question that Brian has to answer a lot in this movie. He doesn't really know which way he wants to go. It's clear that he values his job as an FBI agent, but it's also clear that he's a guy that values that street life. He feels like he gravitates more towards the illegal criminal enterprise of things. There's a whole bunch of great moments throughout this movie. I mean, take the race between Brian and Dom, where they're trying to race to see if the winner can get into Braga's cartel so that they can do jobs for Braga. This is going to become a sore point of contention for Brian in future movies, but it's really awesome to see that race play out. Brian, he's all over the road. He's going off. The GPS is fussing at him. He's basically like, shut up! There are moments like that throughout this movie that remind you of why you're a Fast and Furious fan, and it's really awesome stuff. We also see Gal Gadot in this movie, aka Wonder Woman, because Wonder Woman's in this movie. But seriously, who could have thought, like, who would have imagined that Wonder Woman would be in a Fast and Furious movie? I saw Gal Gadot at first, I was just like, oh yeah, that hot, sexy ass chick from the Fast and Furious movies, and now all of a sudden one day she's Wonder Woman. I mean, that's life for you, folks. We also get introduced to Leo and Santos. We also see Han is back from Tokyo Drift. We sort of get a sense of an established relationship between Han and Dom that pays off in Tokyo Drift when he shows up at the end and he's like, hey, Han had a family. Again, the full picture isn't clear yet, but there are great moments like that, great character interactions, and also this movie does what the first movie did. It tries to slow down the car action a little bit and focus on character interactions, and that is why the strongest part of this movie, like I said, is the brotherhood between Dom and Brian. The FBI, the entire movie, they're kind of like, hey, Brian, you're losing sight of what your job is, and Brian knows that he's losing sight of what his job is, but that's because he has such a close relationship with Mia and Dom. Although there is this one funny scene where Brian and Dom are talking in a garage and they're having like a bro to bro moment, and then Mia comes home with groceries, because again, that's all she does in this movie. He goes in and she's crying and she's unpacking the groceries, and then they just decide to bang. Why? Because they're two attractive people in a Fast and Furious movie. Somebody needs to have sex. I feel like this movie drops the ball in a few places though. For one thing, they try to reuse plot points from the first and second movies and incorporate them into this movie. Once again, it's about going undercover inside a dangerous cartel. Once again, it's about nailing somebody or bringing somebody down at the head of that cartel. And once again, it involves drivers or racing in order to get the job done. And it comes off as kind of tired in this movie. It does. It's for the first time in the franchise, it kind of feels like that car is running out of gas a little bit. It feels like the engine is stalling out before it reaches the finish line. And honestly, that's a problem. The biggest problem I have with this movie overall, and why I can't elevate it over some of the other films in the franchise, is because the movie takes itself way too damn serious. Now again, as Fast and Furious fans, we know what we're in for at this point with these movies, and there are enough ridiculous, unrealistic moments in this movie where you should be having fun. Honestly, this movie is a lot more somber, it's a lot more sad, it's a lot more serious than the other movies in the franchise, and that kind of is a turnoff for me because I want to still feel like I'm having fun. The characters aren't having fun, and obviously part of that is because Letty died, I get it. But ultimately, I feel like the movie in general has a much more serious tone and doesn't really have that fun blockbuster escapism that some of the other films in the franchise have. And as a result, it kind of makes this movie a little bit harder to watch. If you're gonna have ridiculous stunt work like this and unrealistic shit and Dom getting shot in the shoulder and not even feeling a thing apparently, if you're gonna have ridiculous shit like that, you need to keep it fun, you need to keep it light, you need to have the people in the movie acknowledge the ridiculousness of the situations. And instead in this movie, they don't really do that, and so that's kind of a bummer. That's why I kind of have to knock this movie down a little bit. One last thing, I also have to give shout out to the soundtrack. This is probably my favorite soundtrack in this series at this point. I mean, it was my favorite soundtrack since Too Fast, Too Furious, and I think it was the best soundtrack of the first 4 movies. There's a whole lot of Pitbull in this soundtrack too, and I like Pitbull even though 99% of the time when he's doing his Spanish verses, I have no idea what the fuck he's saying. Blanco. 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 Hey, I got a C- in Spanish in high school. Sue me. I'm sorry. Pitbull, I love you, I just don't know what the hell you're saying. It's a great return to form for the franchise. It's great to see Brian and Dom back together. It's great to see other characters pop up that are going to become even more important as the series goes on, like Han and Giselle. Ultimately, the movie takes itself a little bit too serious, and the movie is coming off as a little bit too tired and formulaic at this point. And that's why I gotta knock this movie down a little bit. Fast and Furious is probably a post-crisis Man of Steel rating for me. Yeah, it was good. Just should have been a lot better. Alright guys, that is my review of Fast and Furious, or F4, or whatever the hell it's called nowadays. Tell me, of the first 4 Fast and Furious movies, what was your favorite car race or car chase scene? Go. Please like and subscribe to the Superfan Show, and as always, if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.
He asked me, you know what you was doing, yo, hair. Now he looking at your girlfriend, now you can egg all bullshit, he don't care.